I'm just going to finish up that chapter. Next week, I'll go over the homework. So have it in by next week. And I'll give you a good grade if you make an effort, even if you get them wrong. So just have them in. Then we'll go over the homework. And then the final will be taken from the first midterm plus new questions that are basically from the homework. Okay? From homework 3. Well, from all the homeworks, but really especially homework 3, because homework 1 and 2 were more or less covered by the final. I mean, by the midterm. We don't have much to do tonight. Just tell me some. What's going on here? What chapter are we in? So we talked about I/O architectures. We went through all of this. Interrupt-driven I/O. We talked about DMA. So there's program controlled, or CPU controlled I/O. Byte at a time, polling. That's a bad thing. Then interrupt-driven. You no longer have to poll, you just wait for an interrupt. But you may still have to move one several bytes at a time. So it's really only good for, mouse or keyboard, or just a few bytes, a byte or a few bytes at a time. DMA is nice because now you don't, it frees up, you still use interrupt, of course. But it frees up the CPU for moving data from device registers to main memory. The DMA controller can move the data directly into memory. Okay? And then there's channel I/O or I/O processors. Now you can do all kinds of things. You can, for example, copy files without any intervention of the CPU. To point how different that was, when they first built Unix, the cp copy file command was a compiled C program that moved a block of data into memory from one file, read it, and then wrote it out to the other file. Everything went through main memory through the CPU. So what is the evolution of I/O from program control to interrupt-driven to DMA to channel or I/O processors? What is where they can run their own programs? What is the main thing of that evolution? What is the main thing that's it's freeing up the CPU to do what it does best, okay, so character I/O devices, so usually interrupt-driven. Modems, keyboards, mice. Block I/O devices are usually DMA or channel I/O because you move large blocks of data at a time. Now, usually when you're doing a read like in C++ or Java, what happens is you initiate a read to read a couple of from a file, a couple of integers. It reads a whole block from the file into a buffer, and subsequent reads are just advancing a pointer along in that buffer. When you get to the end of that buffer and it's exhausted, then it reads another block of data from the disk. So we saw what the disk looks like. We went through this, and we saw what the disk looks like. Okay, and now there are sectors on each of the tracks. In the old days, on hard drives on the mainframe back in the early 80s, there weren't sectors. you had to select the block size. Now the block size is just a sector. It's inside a sector. You had to select the block size so that a multiple of the block size filled up the track as much as possible. On these disk drives we used way back 40 years ago, it was like 13K was the track size. Doesn't matter. So that's what it looks like. So clearly moving the arm back and forth, it's an electromechanical device. It's a servo, that's what we call it in robotics. Apply voltage, it moves the thing. Motor. Apply voltage to the motor. That's the slowest thing. Once it gets over the cylinder where you need, and you know which, track to read on, top, maybe the middle guide. Once you get over the cylinder, then the cylinder's spinning 7,800 RPM, the platter spinning 7,800 RPM, that time is minimal. Okay? So what is a cylinder? It's the same track. Look at the outermost track. Right? It's the outermost track on all the cylinders, on all the platters that makes a cylinder. Okay? Data blocks are addressed by the cylinder, surface, and sector. Okay? There are a number of electromechanical properties of hard disk that determine how fast it is. Seek time is the dominant thing. Okay? That should cover ways of minimizing seek time algorithms. Because normally there are a bunch of I/O requests, not just your program running, all kinds of other things. I mean, if you're on a Windows machine, if you ever did, Task Manager and look at all the processes running, and there's so much I/O going on, not just you. But anyway, there's a bunch of I/O requests. The order in which to service them really depends on, you want to minimize the movement of you want to minimize the seek time. And so there are algorithms like Elevator, etc., that you study in operating systems sometimes to minimize seek time, disk schedule. And like I told you, there was a PhD student that I was involved on the committee, Bob Gazelter, who was like the same age as me. So I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement because he believed he had a better, and he might have had a better way of doing hard drives to make them faster. Unfortunately, I think that hard drives are going to go the way of the dinosaur. I told you this last week. I even saw the commercial 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. So, my last PhD student, probably, that I will ever have, and my mother, I'm retired. But anyway, Typhoon Pay, 7 years ago, he had a laptop that did not have a hard drive. It had only the solid state drive. And he said the day was coming. And I didn't believe him then, but I believe him now. So seek time plus rotational delay is access time. Rotational delay is not much. The disk is spinning. Once the head is over the track, waiting for that sector to spin under the head, it's spinning at 7,800 RPM, for example. Come on, it's minimal. The big disk time is the disk head's moving. That's the seek time. We don't care about that. Their limitations include very slow compared to main memory, fragility, moving parts wear out. Reductions in memory costs enable the widespread adoption of solid-state drives. Computers see solid-state drives as just another disk drive, but they store data in non-volatile flash memory circuits. Flash memory is also found in memory sticks and mp3 players. SSD access time and transfer rates are typically 100 times faster than magnetic disks. Much slower than RAM, than main memory. But still 100 times faster than magnetic disks, so they're better in that sense. However, it's block addressable like disk drives, and the duty cycle of a flash is between 30,000 and 1 million updates to a block. But updates are spread over the entire medium through wear leveling to prolong the life of the solid-state drive. and the life is getting better and better and better, where it's going to reach the point that before the solid-state drive becomes unusable because you've written to every block too many times, because there's a limited number of times you can write to it and erase it. The hard drive, 10 years would have worn out anyway. So enterprise solid-state drives must maintain the highest degree of performance and reliability. Onboard cache memories are backed up by capacitors, blah, 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 blah. All right, so the JEDEC, isn't that something from Star Wars? JEDEC set standards for their performance, blah, blah, blah. All right, so optical discs provide large storage capabilities very inexpensively. They come in a number of varieties, CD-ROM, DVD, and worm. Many large computer installations use document output on optical disc rather than paper. The idea is called computer output laserdisc. It's estimated that optical discs can endure for 100 years. Other media are good only for a decade at best. CD-ROMs were designed by the music industry in the 80s and later adapted to data. DVDs also. I had a friend who was saving my whole system for some reason. I thought it was the thing to do. And the system cracked out, was kind of computer. But anyway, he created a data DVD and wrote everything to the data DVD. How did he back up the entire computer to the data DVD? Well, he had to back up Windows 2. So he put in this disk that had a minimal operating system that was just enough to be able to take everything on the hard drive, including Windows, and back it up to the data DVD. So I remember that. We did that. That was like 15 years ago, anyway, at least. So, binary ones and zeros are delineated by bumps in the polycarbonate disc substrate. The transitions between pits and lands define binary ones. If you can ramble a full CD-ROM track, it will be nearly 5 miles long. Wow. All right. So it's much more complex than that of a magnetic disk, the logical data format. I don't really care. Different formats are provided for data and music. MP3, MP4 for video and stuff. 2 levels of error correction provided. Because of this, a CD holds at most 650 megabytes of data, but contains 742 megabytes of music. DVDs can be thought of as quad-density CDs. And there's a bunch of DVDs. Like a DVD can hold as much as 17 gigabytes. This is in old notes, old text. This is like 5 or 10 years old. Maybe it's more now. I don't know. One of the reasons for this is that a DVD employs a laser that has a shorter wavelength than the CD's laser. So bits and lands can be packed closer together in a spiral track. The shorter wavelength light can read and write bytes in greater densities that can be done by a longer wavelength laser. So that's why, for example, when I told you about how they do chips with the mask layers, instead of photolithography, it's now X-ray lithography. Because the wavelength of light is just too big. It's bigger than the features. So they use X-rays, it's far and away. But now there was something I read the other day about how they can do stuff with light that requires a shorter wave. Oh, I forget what it was. All this stuff pops up on the computer. I read it for a few minutes and it's, oh, that's interesting. And I don't take notes. I should have, so I could have told you about it, but I didn't really care. Okay. The 405 nanometer wavelength of blue violet light is much shorter than either red or orange. The manufacture of blue violet lasers can now be done economically, bringing the next generation of laser discs. That's Blu-ray. Now you know why it's called Blu-ray. Alright, that's it. 25 gigabytes. Multiple layers can be stacked up to 16. All right. Then there's optical disc. Then there's magnetic tape. Oh, who cares? No one uses this anymore. Used to use it at General Motors. We use it. The last time I used any kind of tape was cassette tapes. Was for Mr. Getz when he went away, and we used to do the backup of the whole Solaris system that we have, these spark workstations, and we use them anymore. Was done to cassette tape, and every night I had to change the cassette tape while he was away for a week or two. Other than that, no one uses tapes. Digital audio tape systems employ whatever. They don't care. There's magnetic tape. We used to use them before disk drives, hard disks, never mind the other ones. We didn't have CD-ROM. Hard disks back in the early 80s couldn't hold as much data as a tape. So the largest files that you may see was still, with like millions custom for millions or several million customers. Their information was still held on magnetic tape, which was a pain to update, because you had the daily transactions in sorted order and the magnetic tape, and you had to run a merge update. You know, read the next transaction, read forward on the master file, and then you produce a new master file the next day on tape. Whatever. It's the days of stone knives and bearskins. I'm sorry, just remembering what I did 40 years ago. All right. Now, RAID is the last thing I'm going to cover on this, and then I'm going to Google some supercomputers so you can see. Yes?
I was going to say solid state's also getting phased out.
Really? Solid state's getting phased out? What's the new thing going to be?
Like the M.2s, they're little sticks that look like RAM. They're faster, they're smaller.
But what are you going to have inside the computer or the laptop?
That's what you would put. It literally looks like a little stick of RAM on the flash drive. It can hold up to like...
But you put it in,
yeah.
But it's removable. But don't you need some storage that's not removable?
Yeah,
Like
it goes on the motherboard.
Yeah.
It's not like a peripheral. It's
Oh,
like
it
a
goes
little
onto
stick
the
that
motherboard.
you can
Wow.
stick right on the motherboard.
So the world has moved by. So what's it called again?
It's NVMe M.2.
NVMe?
Non-volatile.
NVM, oh, non-volatile, NVMe.
E.
Non-volatile memory. Wow. So that is cool. See, I didn't even know that. But anyway, here's RAID disk arrays like Professor Rayford has in his office. There's a whole bunch of different RAIDs. You know, it stripes things across multiple disks, across different drives. Then RAID level 1 is just mirroring, where you keep copies of things. And then RAID level 2, set of data drives and a set of handling code drives. Then level 3 stripes bits across a set of data drives and a separate disk for parity, so you can read them faster. They're coming off multiple disks. And it goes, I don't know, it goes up to RAID. You can read all these different RAIDs. It goes up to what, RAID level 10? I don't even know what it's up to now. But we have asked Mr. Getz if you're curious about RAID. Alright. Improvements have occurred in material science, error reading codes, future data storage, supermagnetic limit, maybe biological computers. Alright, so you can store stuff inside of quartz crystals, right? So that on each hand. Crystals to go. Alright, so what is it? Let's look it up. Since I was ignorant. So I'm falling behind the times. I'm caring. You know? That's for you guys. It's your generation. Non-volatile memory express is a new storage, access, and transfer protocol for flash and next generation solid state drives that delivers the highest throughput and fastest response time for all type of enterprise workloads. Wow. Is it better than SSD? It's more efficient and a faster method to access non-volatile memory compared to the older SATA SSDs. Wow. NVM Express. So what does Wikipedia say? They know everything. I only once got involved in the discussion of one site because it was something I knew about and they were wrong. But most of the time they're right. Logical device interface specification for accessing computer's non-volatile storage media, usually attached via a PCIe bus. Okay, so it is something internal. It's not like a flash drive you take in and out.
But you can also do that.
Yeah, it's removable. But actually, they were even removable hard drives. The same guy who wrote the Data DVD convinced me to buy a removable hard drive. That computer's in the garbage now after a year. It's a waste of money. But anyway, you know, they also have removable hard drives. I don't know, just saying. But that's cool. You can remove it, but generally you don't. All right? All right, so I'll read about this later. Now what I want to do is I want to look at, just show you a few and then we'll end. So we haven't done much on parallel processing. I showed you world's fattest, it's me. Oh my gosh. My wife loves that show. But the guy that reminds me of Typhoon Pay when he was PhD student, the doctor. You know, my 600-pound life, I can't watch that. It's ridiculous. I'm fat enough. I can't watch. She finds it interesting. She's not 600 pounds, by the way. She just finds that show interesting. With the Turkish doctor, reminds me of Typhoon. Okay. These are the worlds in 2022. Let's try 2023. Come on. So, the Sequoia is 13. Speed is 17.1 petaflops floating point operations per second. The number of cores is 1.5 million. That's IBM. And it's in Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Professor Whitlock used to do work in parallel programming in Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. So, you know, giga is a billion, tera is a trillion, peta is 1,000 trillion, quadrillion. The Pangea 3, 17.8 petaflops. It only has 1,000 cores. Oh, what's wrong with that? Sitting in the research center in France, IBM. Another one, 18.2 petaflops. I remember when it was Blue Gene L, like 10, 15 years ago, the one they used on the Human Genome Project. Just one computer. Blue Gene, just over there. Then we have the Super MUC-NG, 19.4 petaflops. These are all like, you know, things go perfectly well. Remember I talked about pipelining? It's all like, there are no problems. You can do that many operations, everything running in parallel perfectly. You know, so you gotta take this with a grain of salt, but it's really fast. 305,000 CPUs. A core is basically a CPU. AI bridging cloud infrastructure, 19.8 petaflops by Fujitsu. Where do they have one of those? National Institute of Advanced Industrial and Technology in Japan. Look at that. Yeah, it's a monster. Now, 1,000,000 petaflops, Cray. Cray was one of the first supercomputers. Seymour Cray left IBM, just like Amdahl, and they made their own supercomputers. First Cray started Cray, and then Amdahl started Amdahl.
The rows of the machines, is it like the array of all of those machines makes up the supercomputer? Or?
I think so. I'm not sure. You find out. Tell me next week. Okay? I'm sure. It's got 1,000,000 processors. The Piz Daint. What that is. That's from the bathroom. That's 21.2 petaflops. Another Seymour Cray's company at the Swiss National Supercomputing Center, Switzerland. The Frontiera used to be the fastest. They use it for a particle accelerator? Oh, it's data collected from like the Large Hadron Collider, which everybody was afraid was going to make a miniature black hole that would destroy the world. Do you remember that? But anyway, this one is 23 petaflops. It's got 500,000 CPUs. That's made by Dell. Wow, so Dell's involved in it too. That's the Texas Advanced Computing Center. Unfortunately, everyone who works there was shot there. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, that's not something to make a joke about. I'm sorry. It's just frustrating when you read about this stuff. All right, so, wow, 61.4 petaflops. That's the Tiani Tue, I can't even pronounce it. Wow, look at that. Look at the rows here. The Japanese writing on it. Almost 5 million CPUs. NUDT. No, it's in China. Sorry, that's not Japanese writing, it's Chinese writing. I'm sorry. I'm not good with Asian writing. I don't know any of it. The Sunway. Another one in China. 10 million cores. We're really falling behind with this stuff. The Sierra, which they said, made by IBM. Again, back in 94.6 petaflops with 1.5 million cores. All right, IBM beats out the Chinese computer. I still buy the stuff at the dollar store. Anyway, so, and it's at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories. Professor Whitlock did work with them on several occasions. She was a real, Professor Paul Whitlock was a real scientist. She's a good friend of mine. I was friends with her before she came here. When I was a graduate student, she was a visiting, she was a research scientist at NYU. After I got a job here as a professor, she came here as a professor. She and her husband were at my wedding. I mean, I've been friends with her forever. She's so brilliant. She's a real scientist. What she did for her parallel computing was quantum chemistry, which is small atoms, you know, a few number of electrons, low atomic number, deducing their chemical properties directly from their quantum mechanical properties. very expensive computation. She's also an expert on random number generators, pseudo-random number generators, especially for parallel computation. She wrote the book, literally, on Monte Carlo methods. So anyway, and finally, just before she retired and saddled me with the awful job of being graduate deputy, which I'll never forgive her for, we finally collaborated on research, Gwen Chen and me and her, on random walks and Monte Carlo methods. And I was so honored to be able to do work with her. She was really, really smart and brilliant. So next week I'm going to review for the final, so have homework 3 in. I'm not going to take it after next week, so just write anything down if you have to. We'll go over it. The final will include stuff from the midterm and stuff from homework 3. Okay? Alright, so anyway, it's nice. It combines 2 types of processors, IBM's Power 9 processor and NVIDIA's Volta GPUs. I told you how powerful those GPUs are, right? And what is tensor processing unit? How's it different than GPU? I'm not going to tell you what tensors are. Read a book on relativity. See, there is a generalization of vectors. That's about the best way to describe it. Use tensor for anything. Actually, yeah, medical imaging is sometimes used. It's mainly used in physics. Relativity. Here's the summit. Again from IBM. Good, now I don't feel so bad. We beat out the Japanese and Chinese supercomputers. Alright, so, International Business Machines. It's at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. 148.6 petaflops. It can deliver 200 petaflops at peak. Remember, gigaflop is a billion, teraflop is a trillion, 1,000 times that is a petaflop, floating point operation. It's a quadrillion. This is a quarter of a quintillion, I guess, 200 quadrillion. It's just a really big number, right? I mean, a million has 6 zeros, a billion has 9 zeros, a trillion has 12 zeros, a quadrillion has 15 zeros. So with these, 200 petaflops is going to have like 17 zeros after. Okay? Its servers take up the size of 2 basketball courts. That answers some of your questions. Does it include all of that stuff in the room? Oh, yeah. Okay. Wow. 9,200 Power 9 processors and 27,600 NVIDIA Tesla V100 GPUs. System is connected by 185 miles of fiber optic cable, and it consumes enough power to run 8,100 homes. Summit became the first supercomputer to break the exascale barrier. Analyzing genomic data, it achieved a peak throughput of 1.88 exahops, which is nearly 2 billion calculations per second. Wow. A quadrillion is just a million billion. This is 1,000 times that. Scientific, well, by next year, the summit is a step towards that. And finally, the forget about it. Fugaku. The Japanese. Yes, again, darn it. Fujitsu. It makes 442 petaflops. It has almost 8 million CPUs. Look at this. This is a big room here. Isn't this the room the guy stepped into in Now You See Me Too, or whatever it was? You know, that movie was really, I like those movies. I know they were dumb. I like magic a lot. So, I like Now You See Me, and then Now You See Me Too. I like those movies. I think they were an homage to magic. Alright, whatever, even though the plots were ridiculous and, you know, unbelievable with plot holes the size of, you know, you drive the garbage truck through, it didn't matter, I just liked them. So anyway, so they had to steal something from the supercomputer and that movie. Remember, I don't know what that was, it was ridiculous nonsense. The chip that could decode everything, so stupid. But anyway, but still, it was a fun movie. So, it's a great achievement for the Japanese government, but designing such a powerful system didn't come cheap. The government has spent about $1 billion in the project's R&D, acquisitions, and applications development. Fujaku runs on 2 operating systems side by side, Linux and a lightweight multi-kernel OS, you know, like Multix we have, called IHK McKernel. Ooh, McKernel, they have that at McDonald's, didn't they? Linux handles portable operating systems interface, POSIX compatible services, while McKernel runs high-performance simulations. It is designed to address high-priority social scientific problems such as weather forecasting, clean energy development, drug discovery, personalized medicine, exploring the laws of quantum mechanics. Weather forecasting is hard. You have to break the whole area, say the U.S., into small grids, and you got to keep stepping through it, updating each one each time. That's expensive. So-called continuous field simulations are expensive.
What's the relationship of like quantum computers to these kinds of supercomputers?
Okay, we still don't have really workable quantum computers.
Okay.
The idea is that quantum computers, with a smaller amount of hardware, would do a lot more stuff in parallel. So, for example, if you had 100 qubits, that simultaneously is storing 2 to the 100th power bits of information. So a lot of what quantum computers can do is do stuff, certain algorithms that they've developed so far, Grover's algorithm and Manhattan Sesame Street, and a few others, they've developed algorithms that would, we could get them really working, that would run stuff a lot faster. And, but they can't compute anything that we can't already compute with Turing machine for anything. Now, I'm not an expert in quantum computing. The person in this department who is Professor Nelson Yanofsky. He actually wrote a book on quantum computing, he's a physicist. So I remember reading lots of it. But, so that's, and my daughter took a course in the summer before college in quantum computing. Really kind of pushing that. But it's got to be realized. But when if it comes, it will be able to do things lot faster than current computers.
So it would be like that, but you wouldn't need a whole like warehouse of
Exactly.
servers.
You'd have one box the size of a refrigerator to replace this giant warehouse the size of a couple of basketball fields.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the thing that would make it great.
Okay.
And you know, well, we'll see. The jury's still out, but there's a lot of hope for quantum computing. I know if quantum computing comes, I'm buying a quantum computer. I'm just kidding. I don't know that I'll be able to. All right, that's enough for tonight. I bored you a bit. All I'm going to test you on is the midterm and homework 3, or anything in the first 2 weeks. Okay? Let's study. I'll review for the final next week. A brief review. All right? And that's it. And then the final is the following week, unfortunately. And it would be nice to give it next week. I've had
cada um tem uma escola. Só se abre o próximo. Não. Bye.